My mom is a kleptomaniac who's afraid of getting caught, so she's always used me as a shield. When I was little, she'd hide stolen candy in my pockets, then loudly blame me. Why are you so greedy? Also, your mouth shut at home. To look good to the neighbors, she even stopped buying me formula, stunting my growth. Later, she stole a friend's iPhone from their house and, when caught, cried, "How could I raise such a bad child?" My friend left me, and I was isolated at school. I ended up working in a factory after graduation. On my wedding day, she slipped my mother-in-law's gold necklace into my purse. When it went missing, she disowned me publicly. "You're still stealing from your mother-in-law? You're a disgrace." The video spread, and everyone called me a gold digger. I jumped into a river in despair. When I opened my eyes, I was back in that supermarket. Hearing my mom tell the cashier I stole the candy, I looked up innocently and said sweetly, "Mommy, you put the candy in my pocket. Why are you lying?" The words hung in the air. My mother's face instantly flushed a deep shade of crimson. Without a second thought, she clamped her hand over my mouth. "You naughty girl," she hissed. "How dare you lie after you've been caught?" I looked at her face, twisted with guilt and panic, and a storm of hatred and fury surged within me. This was the face that had ruined my life. I knew why she had the sickness. Growing up, she was convinced my grandparents favored her younger sister, my aunt, giving her all the things that should have been hers. But I remembered clearly, my aunt wore my mother's old clothes and played with her old toys. Despite the reality, this false sense of deprivation clung to her like a toxic vine for her entire life. After she got married, she started shopping compulsively, racking up crippling credit card debt. When my father left, it only got worse. Stealing was the only way she could feel that pathetic, twisted thrill of getting something for nothing. I used to feel sorry for her. I naively believed that if I just grew up, made money, and gave her the best of everything, I could cure her. I was wrong. Every time she was caught, she threw me in front of her as a human shield without a moment's hesitation. From a few scallions at the market to my mother-in-law's gold necklace at my wedding, she built her own innocence on the ruins of my reputation and my life. I was condemned by everyone, branded a gold digger, and scorned by the world until I finally threw myself into the cold, dark river. This time, I would not be her scapegoat. I couldn't save her, but I had to save myself. The memory faded, and the stares of the people around the checkout counter felt like needles on my skin. I pried her hand from my mouth and, with all the strength my small body could muster, I shouted in my most childlike voice, "My teacher at daycare said we can't touch anything in the supermarket. We have to wait for the cashier lady to go beep, and for mommy and daddy to pay the money. Otherwise, it's stealing." I looked up at her, my voice filled with faux concern. "Mommy, you're a grown-up. Why don't you listen to the teacher? Why do you have to steal? Look, even Jane is a good girl." My voice cracked with staged fear. "Mommy, the teacher said a policeman will come and take you away if you steal. Please put the candy back." "What if the policeman comes?" I let my eyes well up with tears, perfectly playing the part of a good child terrified by her misbehaving parent. I was giving her one last chance. If she admitted her mistake right then, showed even a flicker of remorse, maybe there was still a sliver of hope for us. But she reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, her voice shrieking. "When did you learn to lie like this? Everyone, be my witness. I'm a grown woman. Do you really think I, who can have anything I want, would steal a cheap lollipop?" As she spoke, she poked my forehead with a look of profound disappointment. "Have I starved you? Have I not given you enough? Is this how you repay me, by humiliating me in public?" I wasn't going to give her another chance to perform. My heart was no longer soft. My voice was clear and crisp, not loud, but sharp enough for everyone who was pretending not to listen to hear every word. "Mommy, in your pocket. After you weighed the scallions, you secretly added some expensive garlic to the bag." Her face froze. I pointed to the clip in her hair. "And that barrette on your head. You took it from the shelf, and when no one was looking, you ripped off the price tag and put it right in your hair." A wave of stifled gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother's lips trembled. She couldn't form a single word. In a fit of rage and shame, she raised her hand and slapped me. The sharp crack echoed in the suddenly silent supermarket aisle. My cheek stung with a fiery pain. "Hey, what kind of mother hits her own child?" A woman with curly hair, one of our neighbors, stepped in and pulled me behind her. "You can teach a child if they're wrong, but you don't hit them." "Exactly. We all saw it." The kid was making perfect sense. "You're only hitting her because you're guilty," another person added. The cashier's face hardened. She pressed a button on her console. "Manager, security, we have a shoplifter over here, and she's hitting her child. Please come handle this." My mother was completely cornered. Faced with the contemptuous stares and the approaching security guards, she had no choice but to grit her teeth, pay for everything she'd taken, and pay a hefty fine on top of it. After that incident, my mother's carefully crafted image as a simple, honest woman in our neighborhood was shattered. She had to behave herself for a while, to put on a show of being a good mother. She even went out of her way to have someone buy expensive imported formula for me, terrified I might say something else to expose her. But at night, when we were alone, she would stare at me with eyes full of poison, as if I were her mortal enemy. That repressed anger finally found an outlet at my aunt's wedding. This time, she went for something big. At the wedding, I was the flower girl, dressed in a beautiful princess gown, carrying the ring box. Just before it was time to walk down the aisle, I opened the velvet box. It was empty. The ring was gone. Before I could even panic, my mother's shrill cry echoed through the backstage area. "Oh my God, Jane, how could you steal your aunt's ring?" She snatched the empty box from my hands and rushed out to face the crowd, tears streaming down her face on command. She beat her chest in despair. "You have shamed me. How could you touch something so valuable?" My aunt, Claire, instinctively pulled me behind her, frowning at my mother. Sis, don't scare her. My aunt and my mother had a complicated relationship. My grandparents did have a favorite, but it was my mother. Aunt Claire grew up wearing my mother's hand-me-downs and playing with her old toys. The fact that my mother still believed she was the one who had been mistreated just shows how subtly and completely my grandparents had spoiled her. Now that they were grown, my aunt wanted to mend their relationship, but my mother was resentful and constantly made sarcastic remarks. The fact that my aunt had married well and her husband was throwing her a lavish wedding after the birth of my cousin, Leo, had pricked my mother's fragile ego. She was practically insane with jealousy. So, of course, she wasn't going to let the wedding go off without a hitch. In my last life, because of the supermarket incident, my aunt already harbored doubts about me. She believed I had bad character and gave a coveted spot at a top elementary school to someone else in exchange for getting my mother a cushy job as a dorm supervisor there. My mom had it easy. This time, the supermarket scandal was over. I couldn't let my aunt misunderstand me again. I lowered my head, feigning shame. I didn't steal the ring. I might have lost it by accident. But why did mommy's first thought was that I stole it? I directed this question at my aunt. My mother realized she had acted too hastily. But in front of all our relatives, at the wedding of the sister she envied most, she couldn't possibly admit to stealing the ring. Her reputation would be ruined. She had to pin it on me. It was the perfect way to save herself and punish me for my disobedience at the supermarket. She immediately adopted a heartbroken expression. Claire, my dear sister, I'm not accusing her without reason. This child has always had sticky fingers. She steals erasers at school, candy from the store, and if I say anything, she talks back. It's all my fault. I haven't been a good mother. She was a masterful actress, portraying a long-suffering single mother betrayed by her wicked daughter. In an instant, she had stolen the spotlight from the bride. The relatives began to whisper, well, it's not easy raising a child alone. She can't watch her every second. That kid has some nerve, causing trouble at an event like this. She's just bad to the bone. So greedy at such a young age, stealing something so expensive. What will she be like when she grows up? No one will want to marry her. The tide of opinion turned against me. Aunt Claire looked at my mother's pitiful performance, and her resolve began to waver. A look of guilt crossed her face. Sis, she's still young. You can still teach her. Seeing that she was about to be convinced, I panicked. I grabbed her dress. Auntie Claire, you can't think that. It hurts Jane's feelings. I cried out. At the supermarket, it was mommy who was stealing, and she blamed me. My teacher said that's called slander. I stood up as straight as I could. If you don't believe me, you can ask the ladies in our neighborhood. My conviction seemed to sway her again. A flicker of sympathy for me returned to her eyes. Sensing she was losing control, my mother unleashed her ultimate weapon, a full-blown tantrum. She plopped down on the floor and began wailing, slapping her thighs. Why is my life so hard? My parents and my sister bullied me when I was a kid, and now my own daughter is doing it. She pointed a trembling finger at my aunt. Claire, you invited me here today just to make a fool of me, didn't you? I told you not to make Jane the flower girl. I was afraid she'd cause trouble, but you never listen. It's always been this way. Everything has to be your way, and mom and dad always told me to let you have it. I'm the older sister. She was building to a crescendo, and now my daughter steals something and blames it on me, and you take her side. You spoil her rotten, and now she doesn't even respect me, her own mother. Fine, it's your big day. I won't make things difficult. Fine, you win. I stole the ring, okay? I'll pay you back. Is that what you want to hear? My aunt was overwhelmed with guilt. In her mind, my mother had never done anything truly terrible, and her heartbroken cries seemed genuine. Her wavering resolve finally snapped, and she sided with my mother. I knew this would happen. My aunt was soft-hearted, and my mother was a professional victim. After years of a tangled sisterly bond, it was inevitable. Still, a bitter sadness washed over me. In this drama, I was completely alone. Tears, real ones this time, began to fall. I sniffled and said in a small, choked voice, Auntie Claire, mommy said she wanted to check the ring box, so I gave it to her. When I got it back, the ring was gone. I thought the tears of a 6-year-old might earn me some compassion, but instead of comfort, I was met with my aunt's suddenly icy gaze. Jane, who taught you to say all that? Her voice was stripped of all its former warmth. Your mother wouldn't hurt you, but you, at such a young age, you've already mastered the art of twisting the truth. If I hadn't known your mother my whole life, I might have actually been fooled by you. My uncle, Mark, holding my baby cousin who was sucking on his fist, added his own sarcastic comment. We'll have to be careful how we raise our son. Sis, raising a child on your own is so tough. We should have been more considerate. His words were meant to comfort my mother, but they were another knife in my heart. My grandparents, who had always been kind to me, were now shaking their heads in disappointment. Stealing and lying at her age, what will become of her? What a disgrace to the family. The other relatives all started pointing and whispering. My mother, seeing her victory, stopped crying. A triumphant smirk flickered across her face. She had successfully made me the villain and deepened my aunt's guilt towards her all at once. My heart sank. I had nothing left to lose. No, Auntie Claire, why would I take your ring? It was mommy. She's jealous of you and Uncle Mark. She wanted to steal the ring so you couldn't get married. My aunt's face darkened completely. She looked at me with profound disappointment and said, each word a hammer blow. The spot at the elementary school next year. You can forget about it. If I recommended you and you started stealing from your classmates, how could I ever show my face again? My grandparents immediately cooed over my baby cousin. Look at you, Leo. Mommy is so good to you, and you're so grateful and sweet. Your cousin is 6 years old and still so naughty. My mother was still leaning on my aunt's shoulder, sobbing quietly, but the corner of her mouth was turned up in a smile no one else could see. I looked at their cold, accusing faces, and I felt the blood turn to ice in my veins. In the suffocating silence, my baby cousin, who had been quiet in my uncle's arms, suddenly stretched out a chubby little hand and pointed at a round camera on the ceiling in the corner of the room. Jane, no steal, he babbled. Look, black ball, no.